Welcome to the Storytime with Ellie podcast. And today, our special guest lost the love of her life, her husband Sam, to cancer in 2019. While she was navigating the profound grief, she was astonished with the life changing event that unexpectedly opened up her world of possibility. Sheer inspiration motivated her to write To Sam with Love, a survival spouse story. Let's welcome Vickie Paris Goodman. Come on in, Vickie.
Hi, Ellie. Thank you so
Hi.
much for having me.
I know I'm happy you're here because you have an incredible story and I think you have a lot to say. And we want our listeners to hear your story and what inspired you with this very sad story and how it turned your life and helped you cope with grief and the loss of your love, your husband, which is a hard
Yeah.
thing to even think about, but for many people. But go ahead, Vickie.
Well, it was hard for me to think about until it happened. And
Mm-hmm.
then I was astonished that I was actually flooded with optimism the day Sam passed. It
Mm-hmm.
was unseemly to the point where I started to think maybe I should push this away. That's ooh. But I didn't. I thought I was so strong during our 2-year ordeal from the time of his diagnosis to it's like our diagnosis,
Oh,
really.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, until the time he passed. And so I was so strong during that time. And, I did everything that was required. And then during the last few months when I needed to take care of Sam, I did a really good job and I'm not the caregiver type. So I thought, you know what? If good things want to come my way, even on the day he passed, maybe I should let them. And it turned out to be the best decision I could have made because while I was missing him and wondering what the next chapter of life was going to look like and being a little afraid of it, because as human beings, the unknown and all that uncertainty is scary. It's just
Mm-hmm.
human nature. So I did grieve, for a long time. But while I was grieving, I was having all these insights about loss and God's plan, different ways of thinking of these things, much more positive ways of thinking about them. And serendipitous events were happening. And insights were coming my way as though a helping hand were coming from somewhere outside of myself
Mm-hmm.
to guide me. And I let myself be guided, which is a stunning admission because I'm kind of a control freak. And, I didn't know what was guiding me, but I allowed it somehow. I was
Wow.
even
So,
guided, I guess, to allow it.
yes, you did. So in
And
other words,
then,
you don't always write books. This is something that obviously the inspiration of your husband's death made you do this. So you're saying you were guided by you don't even know what. That's a
right, exactly. Well, now I
yeah.
know. Now I know it
Mm,
was God. And
yes,
the thing
absolutely.
is, I mean, I was
Mhm.
raised in a very secular family. And no one in my family that I know of believed in God or an afterlife. In fact, my parents and grandparents thought that people who believed in such things were weak and foolish.
Oh,
But sometime during my marriage to Sam, I did take on a bit of a belief in a higher power. It just seemed that all this surrounding us could not possibly have just come about on its own. So I had begun to believe. The thing is, I hadn't taken it very far. It was pretty rudimentary at the time Sam passed. But after he passed, suddenly I wanted to know where he was and I needed to strengthen my beliefs. And a hospice chaplain that was available to me for some time after Sam passed, about once a month. In one of our conversations where I was asking about the afterlife, she recommended the story of a neurosurgeon, a secular neurosurgeon who had
mm,
had a near death experience
mhm.
after poo pooing the near death experiences of all of his patients. Yeah, he had a massive brain infection that he didn't really have any way to contract, since he didn't have a wound of the kind that is necessary for this infection to even enter his body. So this whole experience
Wow.
he had was divinely inspired. So he has this 7-day, he's in this 7-day coma and has a near-death experience that he describes in his story. And that story took me the rest of the way to believing in God and an afterlife.
Mhm.
And the serendipitous events that were happening, I'll just tell you about a couple of
Yes,
the
please.
short ones. One of them was that the random publication date after I wrote to Sam with love, the company picked this date, turned out to be Sam's birthday. So the publication of the
Oh,
date, randomly chosen
definitely
by the company
serendipitous.
that
Yes.
printed the book, yeah, is Sam's
Wow.
birthday. The other thing was I gave him 2 celebrations of life. We had moved to Arizona from Southern California. So most of the people who knew Sam were in Southern California. So I was going to have a big celebration of life there. But we'd already made so many friends in our new small town in Arizona that I thought I really need to have one here as well. So I had that one first, and I was on my way there to the venue because even though we hadn't been in Arizona very long, there were 60 people on the guest list and 49 of them showed up. So I couldn't have it at the house. So I had it at this venue. I'm on my way there. I'm driving, and suddenly there's this kind of silly looking bright blue tiny car in front of me, and Sam's favorite flower had been sunflowers. And I had planned to have them on the tables at the celebration of life. Up from the roof of this silly little blue car was a
Oh,
plastic flower, and it was bent back toward me so I could see it wasn't just any flower, it was a
sunflower.
sunflower. I
Oh my
know, on my way to
goodness.
his
Yeah.
first celebration of life.
Sign, a
So
sign.
these are the kinds of things that were happening, and opportunities were coming my way, things that I probably wouldn't have had a chance to do if Sam were still alive. And I thought, these are all things I want to do. Places I traveled to Antarctica. It would have been too
Oh,
cold for Sam. He never would have wanted to go
oh
there.
yeah. That's
I
cool.
started singing and found out I could sing, and now I sing in public places.
Wow.
It was
Miraculous.
incredible.
Amazing. Wow.
Well, it was because none of this was on my radar at all. I just thought I'd be lost for a good long time after losing Sam, but it just didn't happen that way. So after 2 years of these
I was gonna
experiences,
say, how long do these experiences, you just answered it. Yeah, I mean, they just started to come into you, all these thoughts and
yeah,
ideas, and you acted on them. So they
I
weren't just,
did.
yeah, they
I
weren't just
wrote the
coming
book.
in, you acted on them. Yeah, great.
Well, I acted on them. Yeah, something I really think it was God leading me. And now I think I know why. So I wrote the book at about the 2 year mark after Sam passed.
Mhm.
And then God he continued giving me insights. Some of them came after I published the book, and those are in some audio episodes that I will offer as a free gift to you. But it's just an
Thank you.
incredible story because this isn't my nature. It wasn't my nature to take care of Sam, but I did it because I loved him so much and he needed me to do it. It isn't my nature to want to get these kinds of messages out to the world that I think will be so helpful. I'm just not that type of person. But here I am, having embraced what's happened to me in such a way that I want to turn it into a movement to help others. So many people grieve so hard and so long.
And
And it's just, yeah.
yeah, don't mind me, Vicky. But when you mentioned, trying to recap now, what you had mentioned that you feel, and again, if it's something you don't want to say, you can always say, oh, let's pass by that. We're good. You mentioned that you felt that it was like God. You said right, you felt like you started hearing these messages and you still do.
Hmm.
Is there anything you did that maybe opened up that channel? Did you start to do prayer? Was there something, meditation? Because many people may want this gift, because it almost sounds like you somehow you received a gift in all this.
Oh,
Just
I did.
right. So with this
I
book here,
did.
so you're going to get
I
listeners. Yeah, they're going to say, "Well, how? What did you do?" I mean, it came to, but was there any little thing that maybe you did to help open
I
up?
didn't, but
Hmm.
it's occurred to me that losing someone so precious to you,
Mhm.
and I don't really feel I've lost him. I know he's still around. His body died, but his soul did not.
Mhm.
Losing someone like that, in other words, having such an earth-shattering experience happen in your life, maybe that alone opened me to these things
Mhm.
happening to me. Maybe I was so perplexed that it kind of altered my consciousness for a
And opened
time
up your mind. Maybe it just, yeah. I mean,
without me even realizing it. I'm thinking, okay, what do I do now? And maybe that opens you, or at least
wow.
it opened me. But it's occurred to me that maybe God has chosen me to be the messenger of this message, because number one, it's more convincing coming from someone who lived so much of their life completely secular without any belief system whatsoever.
Right.
Values, yes, but
Yes.
values, but no beliefs, no real beliefs in God or an afterlife or any of the things that are
Interesting.
really important.
Mhm.
So, and I can speak, I can write well because I was a theater reviewer on the side of my
Mhm.
career um, for many years, over 20 years. So maybe the skill set combined with the secularism that I lived with all those years makes me the perfect candidate to get this message out there.
Okay. And here we are on this
And
podcast.
here we are. Yes, and here we
Let's get
are.
this
And there's the
message.
book and the
Mhm.
audio episodes and everything that's kind of needed to to allow to allow you to take on this message. Our culture conditions us to think of death and loss in a very negative
Absolutely.
way.
I agree.
It awfulizes it. But if you believe in God and an afterlife, a loving God, and an exquisite afterlife that's beautiful beyond words, and if you believe that God has a plan for each one of us, and in my case, the plan was clearly for Sam to predecease me. God has a plan for me to do more things while I'm still on this earth. I think this is one of them,
Mhm.
getting this message out there and to experience all these wonderful things like singing and traveling to
Yeah. And
places
that's
I
just amazing.
probably wouldn't have gone. So that's God's plan for me. And then I will join Sam later.
Mhm.
What is so terrible about this? In fact, it might even be a great thing. Maybe Sam was rewarded with going to the afterlife earlier. I don't know,
Mm.
but it's certainly plausible given the way I now have been instructed by God to see death and loss.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I
So
was going to
the
say,
only other thing go
no,
ahead, Ellie.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to say, because getting back to your book too. But no, you finish your sentence. Let's go back. Go ahead.
Well,
I was going
actually,
to
I
ask
can
you,
now.
we forgot, of course
Yeah,
we
go
do, we
ahead.
forgot. It's just like we're talking.
Yeah.
That's normal. So you wrote so here you are, you lose your husband, just so we can kind of follow. You lost your husband, you're grieving this. Then all of a sudden you got these visions, so to speak, kind of like a vision, a thought. You're
Your
clear,
thoughts.
your thoughts, now all of a sudden you're getting directed, you're singing, you're now writing, you're doing things that you've never done before. And this is all after your husband's death. So now you sit down and you write the book, correct?
Mhm.
Yes. Now you're write the book. Now, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit what's in the book about Sam? About
Sure,
yeah.
absolutely. But before I do, I did remember what I was going to say.
Good.
You know, I hope nobody's turning this off because we mentioned the word death. I know we don't talk about death. We don't like to think about it. We don't like to face it. But my message is so positive with
Yes, it is
regard to
positive.
it.
Yes.
So, that's why I want so badly to help people with this message. So the book actually was published before I received the insights about death and loss. There are other insights in the book. The book is really kind of a roadmap to a great way to move forward. It's an example of how I so brilliantly, unexpectedly, but brilliantly moved forward into the next chapter of life so soon after Sam passed while I was grieving.
Mhm.
So the book
Well,
is
this
kind
is.
of divided into thirds, roughly.
Mhm.
I thought that I should write a little about Sam and a little about myself, but about Sam's life, our time and our time together before getting into his cancer diagnosis and treatment and
Absolutely.
his eventual passing,
Yeah.
because I thought all of that would be more impactful if the reader got to know me and Sam a little bit. And there's some quirky stuff. It's actually a very uplifting book. And that first third is actually funny. I'm self-deprecating in it because Sam
Mhm.
was so much more perfect than me as a human being. No one's perfect,
Um,
but Sam came fairly close.
Sounds like Sam was.
Yeah, Sam was terrific in many ways. He was very funny. And what made him so perfect is that he believed in doing the right thing in every situation in life. And he came pretty close, almost perfectly close to doing that in every situation, no matter what it cost him. He was very philosophically evolved, I like to say. So, and I'm nothing of the kind. So, this was the way Sam and I were.
Uh,
Yeah, it was terrific. And he was so funny. So then the middle third of the book is about the diagnosis, treatment. He lived for 2 years and he did very well for a year and a half.
okay.
So it was all about the things we did,
During
during
that
that time
time.
that we could still
Beautiful.
go,
Yes.
having been told that there will be no chance of survival of this
Oh,
cancer.
to try
There
to
there are
some.
people who you hear about, who beat the odds. The doctors all said Sam will not be one of those. You don't survive what he has. Okay, so
You made the
the
best of
last,
it. Yeah, but this is
yeah,
inspirational for people to see and to read when I mean, no one ever wants to have to deal or walk in your shoes, but God forbid you're in those shoes. You need this inspiration to see how you navigated through those last 2 years of his life.
yes, because anyone can have what I have. I'm convinced of it.
Mm.
This guidance and just a better way to look at loss and death and God's plan. It just doesn't have to be awful. It doesn't have to be tragic.
Mm.
So the final third of the book is all about what happened for me after Sam passed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to
Yeah.
ask you if you
So
could
all
also,
the
okay.
stories, yeah, all the stories, the travel stories, the about how I started singing, and found out I was a decent singer.
Wow, that's
And
amazing. That's like
yeah, it
another
was all these
career.
great things. I know. Well, I feel like I have another one now. I'm supposed to be retired, but
Oh
forget
no, that's
about
never
that
gonna
for
happen to
now.
us. We're not retired. Keep going. Next.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So there's a very interesting thing that happened that I'd really like to tell about.
Please do.
After after Sam passed, one of the really unexpected things that happened was that when I would go to bed at night, and this started very soon after he passed, I don't remember if it was the same day, but it was within 2 weeks. I'd go to bed at night, I would turn out the lights, and I would see this smoky grayish white thing kind of in my view, but it was usually so subtle that I wasn't sure it was really there. And I thought, oh, I've just never noticed this thing before. But sometimes it was vivid enough that it was kind of hard to ignore. And I thought, gee, I wonder, is Sam visiting me? But I thought, Vickie, no.
Uh,
But then I kept seeing it, and sometimes it would be pretty vivid. And I thought, oh, sweetie, are you there? I never got a message back, but it kept coming. And after a few months, it changed color. It became a neon yellow green. And I thought, okay, I don't think I'm imagining that it changed color. It would move the same way, kind of gently back and forth or kind of in and out. But it was this very vibrant, kind of limey yellow green color.
I've heard other
And I
people use that same, comparison on things
really
they have seen. Yes.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so it kept coming, and sometimes it would be so subtle. Most of the time, it would be so subtle, I wasn't sure it was really there. So after a year, I had begun to pray, by the way, right
Oh,
after Sam passed, and I didn't feel comfortable praying for anything for myself. It seemed wrong. I know most people disagree with that, and that's fine. I I don't know, it just didn't seem right to me. So I'd pray for other people who were having hard times or maybe who had uh faced a loss of some kind or who were ill. I'd pray for our country, whatever. I would just pray for anything I could, and I just talked to God. Well, after a year of this and seeing the apparition, the neon yellow green apparition, either subtle or more vibrant at times, I said to God, I said, tonight when I go to bed, I want you to do me a favor. And I know I never ask for anything for myself, but I'm going to make an exception today. I'm really growing weary of wondering if the neon yellow green thing is Sam's soul. So what I want you to do, I had a plan for God. I said, what I want you
yeah.
to do tonight when I go to bed and turn out the light, if it is Sam, make it as vibrant as ever. Maybe make it move differently. I don't know, something to tell me that it's different than usual and it's definitely Sam. And if it's not Sam, just give me jet black to indicate the convincing absence of it. And if it appeared the way it always did, I said, God, then I know you just have chosen not to do as I'd asked, and I'll be no worse off than I am now. So that night, I'm getting ready for bed and I'm thinking, what have I done? What if I get jet black? Am I ready to find out this hasn't been
Yeah.
Sam all this
You better
time?
get your whatever you got to get. Your holy.
But I couldn't
Yeah.
couldn't stay awake forever. I had to go to
Yeah.
bed. So I thought, okay, I'll just take whatever comes.
Oh
So
wow.
I turn out the light, and instead of the usual 3 to 5 minutes that it usually took while I was relaxing and getting ready for sleep,
Mhm.
instead of waiting the usual 3 to 5 minutes to appear, the neon yellow green thing was there immediately after I turned off the light. That was the first time that ever happened. And it was
Wow.
very vibrant. And instead of floating gently around or kind of in and out for about 45 seconds to a minute, as usual, it frantically shot across my view about 4 or 5 times inside of a second or two and then off, as though Sam had expended all of his energy, his
Yeah.
soul's energy, in that one, phenomenal display.
Yeah.
So I burst into tears and thanked God, and I was convinced. I promised God I would never question the identity of the apparition again. I was convinced.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. When I started saying about the glow that you just described,
Hmm.
when I was a kid, I did not see it, but I had two sisters that I remember growing up, and their story was they saw that they were in a room together. They shared a room at the house, and they said they had woken up during the night and they saw exactly what you described, and they didn't say anything to each other until afterwards. I believe it was gone. And then the other ones, because they were afraid, the other one said, "Did you see that?" And they were like, and they were probably like maybe, I think like maybe 12 and 14 or something. They weren't like babies. And they were like, they did see it. Like, yeah, we saw that. And it like grew in the corner. Something, and it was bright. It was very bright. So
Did they describe a color?
and it was green, yellow. It was like it was just like forming. They said it was just really odd. But that was it. That was the only time that they ever talked about that.
Because I have done Google searches. I haven't been able to find anything. I found colors that mean certain things. I
Mm.
found references to that, but I hadn't found any other reference to anything like what I saw.
Well, you described what they said, and I don't know. I
So
don't
this
again,
is,
you're talking many years ago, so I don't, I mean, they were my older sister, by the way. But I mean, I don't know, exactly. But I always, they used to, I think called it like the Green Man or something. Whatever it was fluorescent looking, and it was like, it just disappeared. It was like it was forming of some sort. I don't
wow.
know. I mean, I'm just telling you that now because we're just on your
Well,
podcast.
I'm
I
glad
mean,
you did
I
because I
don't
hadn't
know.
heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
sure.
people see all kinds of things
Yeah.
or they get all kinds of messages or symbols, but I hadn't heard exactly that,
Yeah.
anything really similar to what I see. And I'm still getting these visits
Let
pretty
me,
much
are
every
you in the
night.
home now that you lived in? I'm just trying to
Yes.
look around, see if I see,
No,
like, I'm trying to see if I see people floating around behind you. No.
you have to, the lights have to be out, If I
Oh,
could
yeah, yeah,
make
yeah.
this place really dark, I'd
Did
probably
you,
see Sam floating around.
well, I don't want to, we're getting off, I don't want to get totally off your topic, but we can when we're talking. Did you ever think of getting a spiritual or some kind of, I don't want to call them ghost hunters, because that sounds kind of, but did you ever think of doing that to see if there's something that he's trying to convey to tell you, or something, or the way you've been so intuitive that you probably would pick it right up. But did you ever think of doing that? Of getting
No, and I wish he and I had talked about it before he passed because I would have said, "Hey, maybe there's a way you can send me messages or something, and maybe we could have even come up with something."
Hmm.
But no, it never actually occurred to me. And actually, this is why another reason I think I'm being guided by God is because you said I'm so intuitive, but really, I'm the least observant person I know. I never notice things that are just
Hmm.
out there. People say, did you see that? No, I missed it.
Yeah.
That's me. I'm the one who misses it. So this is different.
Hmm.
This is something kind of purposeful coming
Hmm.
from God. After all the different things, I'm convinced of it because it's just not my nature.
Amazing, amazing. So, do
Yeah.
you have a support group? Did you do anything like that? Did you start some kind of support group in your community that maybe?
I did I didn't start one, but I
Mhm.
actually went to one.
Okay.
It ended when COVID happened. It ended really abruptly and they didn't continue over Zoom or anything.
I was gonna say
But
Zoom was a big thing.
what's interesting is the lady who ran this support group told me her husband had passed 11 years prior and that she was rolled up into a ball doing nothing but feeling sad for 7 years.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you, everyone
And she
grieves
was
in a different
running the
way.
support group. I
Yeah.
know.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So, no, I never thought of doing that,
Or
although
do it on a Zoom even.
right, you
Put
could start a
together,
community.
start like a community. You have your book, you have your experience,
Right.
social media. I mean, it may build, you know, and you're helping others that way as well. People can
Through
reach people.
podcast interviews, you get
Yeah,
a
yeah.
different audience with each show. And so, and I'm so grateful to you and the other hosts who have
Thank
had me
you.
on
Yeah, I'm
so that
glad you
I
came on.
can get this message out there. Yeah. So, um, one of the things too is, when I started to come up with my script for the audio episodes, because I wanted to get the message about some of these insights that came to me after I published the book. I
Mhm.
wanted to get them out there. And one of the things that came to me from God was that souls are perfected in the afterlife. Actually, part of that came from the neurosurgeon who had the near-death experience. He didn't say this, but there were a lot of things that I drew from reading about his near-death
Mm,
experience that
mhm.
he didn't actually say. I kind of was able to take some of the inferences farther. And so, from something he said, I thought, okay, the brain is gone because it dies along with the body. The soul lives on. So, the brain is where negative emotions come from.
Mhm.
And so, negative emotions don't exist in the afterlife, only love and good feeling. So, if someone experiences the loss of their spouse to the afterlife, and they're saying, I can't possibly move on even if I want to, because, I'd feel guilty uh really moving on to a happy life, especially if I do it too soon, or I would feel guilt moving on with another relationship someday because, I believe he's watching. And the fact that there is no anger or guilt
Right.
or jealousy in the afterlife should put all that to bed. You are meant to go on and live your life as you see fit in the happiest way you can see possible, the most productive way, the way that's going to give you the most new experiences. God has a plan for you.
Well said. And I'm
You're
glad
you're
that you were my
just
question. You just told me I was going to ask
yeah,
you
you're
what
just
advice would you're intuitive. I was going to ask you what advice you would give the listeners how to cope with grief.
well,
And
that's the
yeah, you
thing. You
just
don't need to feel
yeah,
guilt over
yeah,
moving on,
thank you. I
even
just
if
want
it
to rephrase
happens
that.
quickly. They just
Yeah.
want the best for you. And if God's plan is for you to move on quickly, if you can see a way through, one tip I would give to people
Mhm.
who lose the love of their life to the afterlife, strike a balance between activities and alone time. These activities are these opportunities I was talking about that were just coming my way, and I felt motivated to embrace them.
Mhm.
Things like singing. Some
Mhm.
friends said, come to karaoke. You don't have to sing. I said, good, because I don't want to sing. But they said, there's a great group of people. And then it turned out I could sing. I rejoined the orchestra. I play violin since childhood. I rejoined the
Nice.
orchestra that I had played in before we got Sam's diagnosis. That was a no-brainer. These are activities. Oh, there was a email I received from our community playhouse. They were announcing auditions for a staged reading, which means you have
Wow.
a script available on
Mhm.
stage. So you have to know your lines, but you don't have to memorize all of them. And I thought, oh, I'd reviewed theater for over 20 years
Yeah,
in
it's funny how it
Long
came
Beach,
back.
California. Maybe, maybe this would be a chance for me to actually act without having to memorize a million lines, which I thought was very daunting. So anyway, I go to this audition, and there were all of these experienced people that were so good. And I almost left the audition, but I thought, you know what do I have to lose? So I did my thing at the audition to the best of my ability, and I wound up getting the female lead for this thing. I'm telling you,
Wow.
my entire
Oh my
life
God.
after Sam passed was so inspired.
Yes.
I tried something and it worked out just about every time.
Mhm.
So these are the kinds of things I was doing. So strike a balance. I kind of got off track here.
No,
Strike
it's
a
okay.
balance
That's what we
between
do. I know.
strike a balance between activity and alone time. I- my latest insight was that loss is two things. There's the loss of the person who was in your life that you didn't really lose, they're still around. That's the part I can do something about. That's the part my message can really help. The other part of loss is that you've lost the life you knew. That's the part you really should get through the grief of, because remember we said earlier that as human beings we're kind of afraid of the unknown and of uncertainty.
Right. Mhm.
And we don't know what life is going to look like exactly. And that's scary. That's the part you really have to reconcile. So the alone time, whether it be hiking or just sitting and thinking or reading a book or, just
S-
being,
Get
being.
out, stay active. That's
Well,
basically
I'm
what you're
talking
saying.
about
Yeah.
alone time. Yeah. I mean,
And alone. Yeah.
it
We're
could
gonna
be
need that too.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the part you need to reconcile what's happened to your life. There's a big change, obviously, from the person you shared your home with not being there anymore. So that's the part that you need to figure out and kind of come to terms with. So that's the alone time, and then there's the activity side too. And if you do the two together,
Mhm.
if you strike a balance between the two, I think it worked great for me
Yes. Thank
because
you
I
for
was
sharing
doing all
that.
these
Yes.
fun, yeah, I was doing all these fun new things,
Mhm.
but I wasn't paying attention to the people that were saying, just keep yourself busy so you don't have time to think or feel.
Mm.
That was bad advice
Yeah, I was gonna
because
say,
it
do you
just
really
puts off
believe
the
that?
inevitable.
Yes, and
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
burying your feelings. You need to grieve, and don't mind me for saying this, but it's the same thing with a divorce. A
yes.
divorce, you grieve. It's not the same because usually in a divorce, you do grieve, and you do have to go
Oh,
through
yeah,
these steps of mourning.
yes.
The only
So this
difference,
message,
yeah, yeah. Go
I'm so glad
ahead.
you brought it up, Ellie, because this message really applies to
Mhm.
any disappointment that has
Grief.
us feeling
Yeah.
sad for any length of time. You could have had a job you loved and suddenly you're laid off because of economic
Mhm.
conditions or something. I mean, we grieve all kinds of
Right, so
things.
these are good
Maybe your
info.
house burns down.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what you need to know is that it's part of God's plan to teach you something.
Yes.
I'll tell you something that I believe is true based on my own experience.
I love your stuff. Got great
I've been a
conversations.
type A personality my whole life. Very impatient. It's the my worst personality flaw is impatience. And God has given me many experiences with customer service people that drove me crazy, and all this. And it finally occurred to me, if I just conquer my impatience, maybe I'll stop having these experiences. So I don't deal with customer service people as often as I used to. And but I had to recently, and I have come a long way in dealing with my impatience. And this was like a four-part problem I had, and this was a company that only had customer service over email.
Oh my goodness.
So I had to compose this
Yeah.
email and get these 4 points across, and I knew they'd only deal with one of them, and I'd be emailing back and forth. But I said, Vickie, you are going to exercise patience with this. Well, this turned out to be the perfect customer service experience. These
Very
people
nice.
not
Mhm.
only heard all four problems and understood all four issues, they sent me screenshots and a video that solved all of them. And I said, is that my reward, God, for finally getting my impatience under control? I didn't get an answer to that, but I think it is. So the point being, if you learn God's lessons,
Mhm.
maybe he'll stop trying to teach them to you and he'll move on to something else.
I gotcha. Well
How's that
said,
for
Vicki.
insight? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for letting us know about this. Wait,
yeah,
God's got nothing on us now.
yeah, exactly.
We're good. We're good. We know what we're talking about. No, wow.
Right, right.
Wow.
So
So, your book, wrap it around, your book, is
to Sam with love.
you don't have a copy, do you? No, you don't have a copy, right?
I do in the other room if you want me to go run get it.
Well, no, we're good. But I think
Okay.
we should show a cover. It's up there.
It's pretty. It's a pretty cover. It's called To Sam with Love, a
Mhm.
surviving spouse's story of inspired grief.
And where
And
can they get
inspired
this?
grief, yeah.
And where can they purchase this book?
The best pricing available for the book is at my domain inspiredgrief.com/book. I've discounted the pricing there. So it's better than getting it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or any of those
Okay.
other places. Yeah. So yeah, it's available in paperback or
We'll have that on
hardcover.
there
And there's
too.
also,
We'll
yeah,
get you.
good in the
Yeah.
show notes.
Mhm.
The other thing I wanted to tell you about is the audio episodes that have
Yep.
those great insights
Yes.
that came to me after I published the book. This will completely upend the way you think of death, loss, and God's plan. We
Okay, let's
talked
hear
about
it.
it
Yeah.
somewhat
Yeah.
here. They're
Yes.
only 12 to 15 minutes each. They're
That's better
three.
yet. You know, you can hold your, you know, your time. It's great. You don't want something too long because then people are off doing what they got to do. 10, 15
Yeah, I
minutes is
mean,
perfect. Yeah.
combined the 3 or 45 minutes, they are so worth listening to. They are at inspiredgrief.com. Take you 20 seconds to subscribe. All you have to do is enter your first name and email address. Do it now, because otherwise, you'll get onto something else and forget. And you really do want to listen to these audio episodes. So just subscribe to them.
And we'll have this on
Inspired
also, like we
Grief.
said,
Yeah.
it'll be
I'm
on,
sorry, what was that,
it will also
Ellie?
be on the podcast, on the notes that
Right,
they
right.
can.
Inspiredgrief.com. Just
Perfect.
go there now and subscribe. It'll take you 20 seconds.
Nice.
So that's it.
Well, thank you, Vickie, for coming on. And it's a fantastic story. I really do appreciate you sharing this with us. And we need more of this type of conversation because let's face it,
We do.
death is not going away. It's
No, and
not,
it doesn't have to be awful.
no, it's
It
not going away.
really
And we,
doesn't
yes,
have, yeah, yeah. So that's the message. And the audio episodes will sock the point home.
I love it. All right. Well, Vickie, I really do appreciate you coming on the podcast. And
Oh, thank you for having me, Ellie.
this is
I,
Vickie. You're welcome. And don't go anywhere. We're just going to stop the recording. And I wanted to get a few things from you. But meanwhile, let's say goodbye. And as we know, story time with Ellie, our motto is everybody has a story. What is yours? Thank you, Vickie, for being on our podcast. Well, don't go
You're
anywhere.